Alright, so good morning, afternoon, or evening. We are back with the 8th Massachusetts Regiment, History, Part 2. General Curtis Guild, who was attached to the staff of General Robert E. Lee, speaking of the sanitary condition which existed in Cuba at the time the American troops went there, says the great wonder is not that thousands of people die there each year of yellow fever and smallpox, but rather that more do not die, as they know practically nothing of sanitation. If a Cuban pony should die, as often happens under the excessive load that is sometimes piled upon them, their carcasses are simply rolled to one side, and they are left to decay. Their sewerage all run into their streets, which are never cleaned. Under the instructions from General Robert E. Lee, the Americans integrated the systems of street cleaning, and he stated that after digging down to the depth of 2 feet, they came upon fine pavement which had been. And that is all for the pages I have there. So, 2. The drilling of raw recruits. The work of getting in shape, properly going into the South, was no little undertaking. Many of the men who enlisted in Somerville before going to Framingham knew practically nothing of military drill, and had to be instructed on this line of work. They were eager to learn, and soon, under the charge of non-commissioned officers, they attained such an efficiency in drill that they were given the chance in the company. Of those who were mustered into the United States service, none worked or studied harder than the non-coms. Non-coms, as different a style as they may be. One of our smartest military men, also one of the first to offer his services, and that of his regiment was Governor Wilcott at the outbreak of the war, was Colonel Adam William A. Pewter of Gloucester. To energy and perseverance of this officer is due to the great extent the record made by the 8th during their years of service. Boarding the train at Framingham, the regiment in due time arrived at the Little, and from this date really commenced their experiences as servants of Uncle Sam. They will not soon forget their first night's experience. Company M was without such a character as for the time reached in Framingham until they returned home again. Jimmy the Rabbit was an ever-present joy to the boys in times of trouble, always being satisfied to receive in return for services rendered a small pittance in money or food, together with some of the cast-off clothing of the boys. Jimmy was an old soldier, having served in one of the Massachusetts regiments during the Civil War. There were also some characters of note who were active members of the regiment, as shown by the next picture. Sadly, I don't have any of the pictures. Popular Howard Gibson, an old member of the 5th, always did like to work, and here you see him engaged in the pleasant labor of digging a sink. How it brings to mind that passage of Scripture, "Man shall live by the sweat of his brow." And in fancy we stop and listen, and will hear him blessing the day he enlisted in Uncle Sam's service to dig sinks for $15.60 per month. But, duty and faithfully performed, it brings its reward. In our next picture we see Howard, beneath the vine of his fig tree, enjoying the pleasure of doing nothing. A thing did not occur any too often while in camp, and it shows. In our next picture, it shows the formation of Company Street. With the officers' tents in the distance, how different from the narrow, cramped quarters in which we were obligated to put up with at Framingham. And just here I wish to put myself on record as favoring the regimental camps, and thereby giving plenty of room in the quarters and on the field, which of the comfort of a regiment depends on the ability of its quartermaster. We think to see them at Framingham, and they have very little to do unless it be striking camp, but in regular service this is all changed. The quartermaster is one of the busiest men in the camp, looking out for supplies of both food and clothing, besides having full charge of the wagon train. And for now, that is where we'll end Part 2. Stick around for Part 3. Thank you again. Hopefully you have a good morning, afternoon, or evening.